The match flared only on Mara Quinn's third try. A tiny flame wobbled in the damp Portland air, as fragile as a minnow caught in a current. She shielded it with her palm until it caught the stub of a candle pressed into the middle of a single muffin. The wind off the Willamette River smelled of rain, though Mara couldn't smell it any more. The city's tram clattered faintly in the distance. She sat on a cold bench near the waterfront, the flame trembling, the muffin balanced on a napkin. "Happy birthday, Mara," she whispered, as if speaking to a stubborn friend. Her own voice sounded thin, almost embarrassed. She blew the candle out. No trace of warm wax in her nose. No faint vanilla of the muffin, nothing. 2 years had passed since her illness had robbed her of taste and smell. She once worked in a busy bakery kitchen, piping sugar roses and layering chocolate mousse. Now she worked the late shift at a laundromat and doodled cake designs in a notebook as if sketching ghosts. She pulled the notebook from her hoodie pocket. Her pencil moved in old muscle memory, a 3-tiered wedding cake spun with dahlias ribbons, folding like silk, the glaze cracked on purpose to mimic antique porcelain. It looked beautiful. But to her it was mute. "Who's that for?" Mara startled. A little girl stood beside the bench, barely 7. A knit fox beanie pulled over her ears. In her hands was a small paper box tied with twine. Her gaze shifted from the still smoking candle to the lonely muffin, to Mara's open notebook. "For me," Mara said, trying to smile. The girl nodded solemnly, as if she had just solved a mystery. Daddy was right. "Daddy?" The girl pointed over her shoulder. A tall man stood a few steps away, a coffee cup in one hand, and a wooden frame tucked under his arm like a crooked ladder. He hesitated, then walked closer. "Sorry," he said, voice low and careful, as though setting down a fragile glass. "We didn't mean to intrude. My daughter saw the candle and asked if we could, maybe, join you for a moment?" Mara blinked. He was in his early 30s, pale blue eyes that looked like morning fog. His coat carried faint streaks of resin, and the frame under his arm was lined with thin metal mesh. "Mara," she said softly, closing her notebook. "Elias Hart," he replied with a nod, "and this is Mina. Happy birthday, Mara." "Happy birthday," Mina chirped. She plopped the box onto the bench with the gravity of a royal gift. "Present." "Mina." Elias started a warning in his voice. But Mara's throat loosened. She untied the twine. Inside lay a chunk of raw honeycomb, glistening amber under the lamplight. She begged the beekeeper at the farmer's market for it. Elias explained, half sheepish. She said birthdays should taste sweet. Mara swallowed hard. "It's beautiful." "Thank you." Elias set the wooden frame down against the bench. "Mind if we sit a while? We'll head out if you'd rather be alone." Mara glanced at the empty space beside her, then at the river's dark surface. "Please, sit." They sat down the river, breathing softly behind them. Mina swung her legs, fox beanie slipping sideways. "Did you make a wish?" she asked. "I did," Mara said. "But wishes don't work if you tell them out loud." Mina accepted this rule with a solemn nod. Elias cupped his hands around the coffee for warmth. "She spotted your candle from half the pier," he explained. "Said no one should blow out a birthday candle alone." His voice carried no pity, only matter-of-fact kindness. The wooden frame leaned against his knee. Mara gestured at it. "That looks unusual. Some kind of ladder?" He chuckled. "Close. It's a hive frame. The bees build their comb on these panels, perfect little hexagons. We just pulled it down from a rooftop colony. Today's damp, the bees were sluggish, so we wrapped up early. You're a beekeeper, part-time. I'm a firefighter on shifts, and in between I help run a small co-op. We call it Quiet Honey. We keep hives on rooftops, harvest small batches, and hold weekend meals for neighbors. It's less about selling honey, more about building community. Mara studied the honeycomb in her lap. Golden cells glistening. The world smelled of nothing, tasted of nothing, but it looked alive. You work with fire and with bees, she murmured. That's two very different elements. They're not so different, he said, smiling faintly. Both can sting, both need patience, and both teach you not to rush. Mina leaned forward suddenly. You should eat it now so you don't get bad luck. Mara pinched off a shard of honeycomb. She bit down the wax, cracking softly between her teeth. No sweetness bloomed, no floral tang lingered, only texture, sticky, brittle, collapsing. But she closed her eyes, listening. Crack, crunch, stretch. I taste with my ears now, she said lightly, tapping the piece of comb. See, sweetness can sound like this. Mina gasped with delight. Eating with ears. That's magic. Elias tilted his head, studying her. You can't taste. His question wasn't sharp, just curious. Mara exhaled. Not since I got sick. Smell, taste. Gone. 2 years. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not the careless apology people tossed out, but the kind that meant, I hear you. Mara waved it off. It's fine. Easier to mention it before people get awkward. They let the silence stretch, filled only by water lapping against pylons and the distant chatter from a food cart. Finally, Elias spoke again. Have you ever tried cooking through what you can still sense? Texture, sound, color. I used to be a pastry cook, Mara admitted. Her pencil rested in her lap. Now I just sketch cakes in a notebook. I can't bring myself to bake anymore. How do you sell food when you can't even taste it? Elias's gaze softened. Maybe by giving people something more than taste. At Quiet Honey, we're experimenting meals designed for those who lost flavor too. But honestly, he lifted the hive frame. I'm clumsy in the kitchen. We could use someone who sees what others don't. Mara gave a small, incredulous laugh. Are you offering me a job? Not a job, Elias said. A place at the table. Come by Sunday, no pressure. Just see if the bees will have you. Mina grinned, holding out her small hand like a handshake. Promise you'll come. Mara hesitated, then shook it gently. All right, I'll come. The building didn't look like much from the street, an old warehouse converted into artist lofts, the brick dark with years of rain. Mara rolled her bike to the side entrance, her nerves tangling. She wore a plain grey hoodie, the same one she always wore to the laundromat. An elevator rattled her up 4 floors. When the doors opened, the scent of warm wood should have been there, but she felt only the draft of air. Down a narrow hallway, sunlight spilled from an open rooftop door. The rooftop was alive. Cedar planters brimmed with rosemary and sage. 6 pale yellow hive boxes lined the corner like treasure chests. A long wooden table stood in the center, already scattered with mixing bowls and knives. Hey, you must be Mara. A woman in a headscarf waved from a counter where she was rolling dough. Her forearms were dusted in flour. Elias told us to expect a guest. He said, look for the woman with kindness in her eyes and a storm in her chest. Mara's breath caught. No one had ever described her that way. He's inside, the woman added, nodding to a small kitchen hut. Mara wheeled forward, palms damp. She pushed open the door. Elias stood at a counter, sleeves rolled up, hands sticky with honey. Mina sat on a stool, drawing bees on the chalkboard. You came? Elias said. as though he hadn't really believed she would. You invited me, Mara replied, forcing a smile. I didn't want to disappoint Mina. Or the bees, Mina added gravely. Elias laughed. He wiped his hands and set a laptop on the counter. So, full disclosure, I'm terrible at design. He turned the screen around. A chaotic mock-up appeared, Comic Sans headers, blurry stock photos, clashing colours. This is supposed to be our website. Don't laugh too hard. Mara pressed a hand to her mouth and snorted anyway. This is a crime against aesthetics. Exactly why I need help, Elias said. Not speed, not polish, just honesty. You have the eye, Mara. And maybe the heart, too. Her throat tightened. You're serious. I'm serious about building something real, he said. And I can't do it alone. Mina slid a yellow crayon across the counter to Mara. You forgot to draw today. Mara blinked, then bent over a scrap of paper. Her hands trembled, but she sketched a heart. I'm terrible at this. No, Mina whispered, smiling. You're trying. That's good. The room grew quiet. Not heavy, just full of stories left unsaid. Elias broke it gently. So, what do you say? Want to help us build a hive that feeds more than just mouths? Mara stared at the child's crayon in her hand, then at Elias's steady eyes. For the first time in 2 years, the idea of creating again didn't feel impossible. Maybe she said, maybe I do. Sunday afternoon light spread over the rooftop like melted gold. Mara found herself surrounded by strangers who moved with the easy rhythm of people who'd done this before. A man with curly hair carefully scattered pomegranate seeds over yogurt. A teenager whisked something foamy in a steel bowl. Mina flitted between tables, acting like the official inspector. Elias handed Mara a pair of thin gloves. Today's theme is golden sounds. Everything we cook should have its own crunch or crack. Like music, Mara said. Exactly, Elias grinned. Except I'm tone deaf in the kitchen. Mara touched a lump of dough a woman was rolling. The air bubbles were sluggish. She tapped the surface, listening. Too heavy. Add sparkling water ice cold. It'll make it pop when it hits the pan. The woman's eyebrows rose. She obeyed. At another table, someone was laying seeds onto custard. Mara leaned closer. Try roasting half of them first. You'll hear the snap when teeth meet crunch against soft cream. Elias watched quietly as Mara moved from station to station, her hands sketching invisible patterns in the air. She was directing not with taste, but with memory texture, and the way things sounded when broken stirred or poured. By evening, the table filled with dishes, thin flatbreads dotted with sesame roasted fruit, drizzled with amber honey custards, capped with brittle shards. Everyone sat around the long table. Mina perched beside Mara, her fox beanie slipping down her nose. Ready, she whispered. Mara picked up a flatbread. She snapped it in half near her ear. The sound was sharp, almost joyful. The group quieted. An older man closed his eyes. That sounds like the first step on fresh snow. Snow? Mina tilted her head. From years ago, the man said softly, I can't smell or taste anymore. But I remember snow. He tapped the brittle topping of custard. This one. This is the sound of walking across an old wooden bridge. Mara's chest filled with something warm and aching. She hadn't expected that sound could be memory, that memory could be flavor. Later, while Mina gathered crayons and Elias stacked dishes, Mara lingered by the railing looking out at the river. Elias joined her arms folded against the chill. You fit here, he said simply. I'm not sure yet. That's all right, he replied. The hive doesn't ask bees to promise forever. Just today. Just show up. Mara glanced at him, words caught in her throat. She only nodded. For the first time in years, showing up felt like enough. March 12th. On her calendar, Mara had scribbled only one word. Don't. 2 years ago on this date, she had woken to find her world strangely muted. Coffee tasted like water, strawberries like wet paper. Vanilla custard, her pride and joy, was emptiness on a spoon. By nightfall, she couldn't smell detergent, couldn't taste garlic, couldn't remember what cinnamon had ever felt like on her tongue. Within weeks, she was on leave from the bakery. She never went back. This year, when the morning sun rose, Mara couldn't get out of bed. Curtains shut, she lay curled beneath a blanket, staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed. Elias. We're prepping a new batch today. Mina insists it needs your magic touch. She read it. She didn't reply. Another message. I've got a spare set of headphones. Want to try listening to Honey Drip? Still nothing. By late afternoon, her phone rang. She let it go. She buried herself deeper under the quilt, as if silence could swallow the day whole. Then knocking, 3 gentle raps at her door. Mara Elias's voice, muffled but steady. It's me. She didn't move. Mara. A pause. I'll leave if you need me to. But I brought something. She forced herself upright, shuffled to the door and cracked it open. Elias stood dripping from the rain, a cardboard box under one arm. He looked worried, but not pushy. Inside the box lay a pair of clear safety goggles, a small tray, and a portable recorder. What's this? She croaked. To hear honey fall, he said simply. When it rains, the comb thickens. If you pour a thin stream into metal, it sings different than on sunny days. Mina calls it the bee's guitar string. Mara's eyes burned. I can't. Not today. You don't have to, he said at once. I can sit on the stairwell with you. No talking, no fixing. Just sit. The words cracked something in her. Slowly, she opened the door wider. They ended up side by side on the 4th step of her apartment's fire escape. Rain rattled against the metal, 1,000 tiny drumbeats. Elias said nothing, only set the box aside. After a long while, he spoke quietly. During firefighter training, I once panicked in a smoke drill. Couldn't see, couldn't breathe right. My captain didn't shout. He just stood with me, hand on my air tank, and said, We'll stay here another minute until your heart remembers it's not alone. Mara's throat closed. Tears slipped hot down her cheeks. I thought losing taste meant I'd lost me, that everything I was had died that day. Elias shook his head. Taste was one door. You've opened 10 others since. You're not gone. You're just different. She pressed her palms to her eyes, breath shuddering. For the first time, she let someone see her crumbling and didn't apologize. And he didn't call her broken. He just sat there, steady as the rain. The next morning, the rain had cleared. Portland's sky was pale, washed clean. Mara showed up at Quiet Honey with damp hair under her hoodie, a nervous tremor in her chest. Elias was already on the rooftop, sleeves rolled up, honey glistening on his hands. He looked up, surprised. You came. You invited me, Mara said simply. Her voice was steadier than she felt. He smiled relief, softening his face. Then let me show you something. On the counter lay a small tray. Elias lifted a thin pitcher of honey and let it stream slowly. It fell in a long golden ribbon, striking the metal with a sound like the first low note of a cello. Mara's breath caught. It was music sweetness made audible. She closed her eyes. Drip, drone, hum. The sound filled the silence that taste had left behind. When she opened them, Elias was watching her carefully. C-suite can be heard too. Mara laughed through a tear. Mina was right. The bees really do have guitar strings. That afternoon she picked up a sketchbook, not of cakes this time, but of sound. She drew jagged lines for brittle crunch, rippling curves for honey's hum dots, for the pop of roasting seeds. Soon her pages looked like sheet music, written by someone who no longer believed in notes, but believed in rhythm. And quiet honey changed with her. She guided the co-op into designing meals by sensation flatbreads that shattered like porcelain custards, smooth as silk fruit glazes that glimmered like stained glass. Guests described memories instead of flavors, like walking on fresh snow, like sitting in a wooden chapel like my grandmother's quilt. One evening, after the last plates were cleared, Elias leaned against the counter and watched her pack her sketches. You know, he said, I thought I was building a honey project. But it turns out you're building something bigger, a place where people remember they still belong. Mara met his gaze, startled. I don't know how to belong myself. Yet everyone who walks in feels it because of you, he said softly. Her hands stilled. For the first time in years, she didn't argue. She just let the words sit in the air like a gift. Summer settled over Portland with long, dusky evenings. Word about quiet honey had spread first to neighbors, then to a local blogger, then to the city council itself. One Friday, instead of their usual workshop, Elias rolled out an old grill on the rooftop. Strings of lights zigzagged between chimneys. Planter boxes overflowed with mint and lavender. The co-op decided to host their first community night. By sundown, the rooftop hummed with life. Children ran between benches wearing paper bee masks Mina had drawn. An elderly couple shared flatbreads, snapping them loudly and laughing at the sound. Someone tuned a guitar in the corner, blending with the background buzz of the hives. Mara wheeled between tables, handing out napkins and pointing guests toward the trays of honey-drizzled fruit. She felt overwhelmed, so much motion, so much laughter. But in a good way, like waves, she didn't need to resist. Still, after an hour, she slipped away to the shadowed side of the rooftop. Her chest ached. She stared at the city skyline lights, glittering like scattered sugar. Too much, Elias's voice came from behind. He laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. Mara nodded, trying to steady her breath. I'm not used to this, to being chosen, not out of pity, but because people actually want me here. Elias crouched so their eyes met. His expression was steady, almost fierce in its gentleness. Mara, I didn't fall for you because I had to. I fell because you're the strongest person I've ever met. Because when you laugh, it feels like a room lights up from the inside. Because my daughter smiles wider when you're around. And because when I see you, I don't feel lost anymore. Tears welled in Mara's eyes. She shook her head. But I'm broken. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. No, Mara. You're brave. The word cracked her open. Not broken. Brave. Behind them laughter rang, children shouted, the guitar strummed. But for a moment the world shrank to a rooftop shadow, two hearts steadying each other in the dark. A month later, the rooftop hive hosted its most unlikely event yet. Not a workshop, not a block party, something smaller, quieter, but heavier with meaning. Elias had surprised Mara with the idea. She'd argued at first, certain it was too soon, too impossible. But when he looked at her with that steady calm when Mina piped up, we could sprinkle petals from the planter boxes. Mara's resistance crumbled. So on a late September afternoon, friends and neighbors gathered between the hives. Folding chairs formed a short aisle. String lights swayed in the breeze. Lavender blossoms and rosemary sprigs perfumed the air, at least for others. For Mara, it was memory, not scent, but memory was enough. Mina wore a yellow dress and clutched a basket of petals. Jacob, the boy of one of the co-op families who had grown attached to Mara, insisted on clapping loudly as she rolled her chair down the aisle. Elias stood waiting in a simple shirt sleeves rolled. No pomp, no tuxedo, just him, firefighter, beekeeper, father. His hands shook only once when he reached to take hers. Their vows were not elaborate. Elias said, "I promise to sit with you in silence when silence is all you can bear." Mara said, "I promise to listen for sweetness, even when it hides." When they kissed, the crowd cheered. Mina shouted, "Best day ever," and threw petals so wildly they landed on the hives. Later, the children fell asleep in a shared pile of blankets inside the kitchen hut. Mara and Elias stood in the doorway, arms around each other, watching their little makeshift family breathe. For the first time since her illness, Mara did not feel like a burden. She felt like a blessing, because she had learned something. No sickness, no loss, no silence could take away. Being without taste did not make her tasteless. Being without smell did not make her invisible. And being alone had never meant she was unlovable. All it had taken was one moment by the river, one father and daughter asking softly, "Can we join you?"